Hey, it's Lauren, and thank you so much for listening. On the show today, I spoke with Sharon Chapman, and we talked about all things anxiety and intuition. One of the things that I love the most about this episode is that Sharon actually gives you numerous techniques to help you deal with your anxiety, different resources, how to communicate anxiety to children, what can cause anxiety, and we talked about intuition as well. Sharon is like super intelligent and she always gives so much value that you're going to be leaving this episode feeling empowered, knowing that you too can work through your anxiety and learn ways of listening to your intuition. It's all here and it's all for you now. Enjoy. This episode's been brought to you by the Raw Spirit team. Growing your business is just the beginning. Too many business owners try to grow their business on their own. They spend countless hours testing out and investing in hundreds of strategies, all with the aim of building their business. Without support, someone helping to guide you and cheering you on, motivation starts to go down. Your passion starts to decrease. You start running out of money and losing faith in your business and yourself. The Raw Spirit team is a supportive community filled with expert programming, up-to-date training, guest experts, mentorship, and like-minded business owners. This isn't another community and another strategy. This is a serious and supportive community of business owners focused on supporting each other and building their business. You are welcome here. My guest today is Sharon Chapman. Sharon is a relationship coach, a speaker, and author based at the Tranquil Glass House Mountains on the Sunshine Coast in Australia. With 20 years professional experience in assisting men and women, she uses her intuitive insight along with her expertise in 16 modalities that she integrates in her sessions. She helps with understanding and improving all relationships, whether it is with a partner, family, friend, or anybody you do business with. Sharon offers support to gain clarity, provide confirmation of what you already know, or sharing the wisdom of trusted guidance when leaving a toxic situation. No matter what trauma you may have experienced, you can heal through love and compassion, so you are able to forgive and attract the joyous and fulfilling relationships you are worthy of. Sharon's joining me today to talk about anxiety and listening to your intuition. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Lauren.
So before we get into the subject at hand, I'm really interested in knowing why you first started, down the world, or why you first got interested in becoming a relationship coach.
Yeah, well, I guess it was my childhood, really. I saw my parents struggle a lot in their relationship. They had abysmal communication skills. They used to fight a lot, and there would be no resolution of what they were actually trying to discuss. And so, what I learned and observed as a child, instinctively, I knew that there was a better way. And so, I used to watch them, and I used to watch a lot of couples around me. And it doesn't matter whether they were a romantic couple. It could be two school teachers that were deciding on a project, or it could be two friends who were, playing in the backyard. But what I noticed was the dynamics of a successful relationship and how that differed from what was actually being shown to me at home. So I guess I kind of observed my parents and decided that they were showing me the contrast of what I didn't want, and that when I grew up, that I wanted to create something that was based more on joy and happiness and good communication.
It's probably going to sound ridiculous, but when I first read that you were a relationship coach, I automatically thought about like a couples coach.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't for a minute until I actually went over your bio, that obviously relationships are more than just the person that you're intimate with as well. And in fact, we have relationships with everybody all the time, everywhere.
Well, that's it. And the most important relationship that you'll ever have is the one with yourself. So, when I'm working with clients, ultimately they're wanting to improve their connection with other people around them. But what I also include in their sessions is them loving themselves, listening to themselves, following their gut instinct, putting boundaries in place, and really acknowledging what they need in their relationship so they can communicate it in a loving and compassionate way to those around them. And yeah, it's about really connecting with yourself first.
I love that. And I know that today we're going to talk a lot about intuition, which is really probably one of the ultimate results of when you do know yourself well. But let's talk about anxiety first, which is the other part of our conversation today. It
Hmm.
feels to me that anxiety is a very rampant and common thing in today's society. And I wanted to know a little bit, first of all, about how you define anxiety. And does anxiety need to be caused from another relationship or an outside force, or can you just be anxious?
Yeah, well, quite often when we are children, we learn anxiety from our caregivers. Givers. So we may have a parent who is prone to anxiety. There could be a school teacher, somebody in the community, a close friend, a relative, somebody who we spend time with and who we really like and admire. And so they have an influence over us. And if we see them experiencing life and they are highly anxious, quite often what we like, we mimic. So we can become like almost like a little repeater of what they are doing. And we're not doing it to kind of put ourselves down. It's just a way of learning. And so quite often it's learnt from an environment when we are a child. So it can be a learnt behavior. On the other side of that, there can be a predisposition to it through DNA. And some people are more prone to anxiety because there is a family history of unresolved emotional trauma that then identifies as mental illness. So there are quite a few ways that I would identify with a client where it's actually come from and how it's affecting them.
So, when I think about anxiety, I think about when I've experienced anxiety, what my symptoms, I suppose, of that are maybe a clenching in my stomach area, maybe sweating, and just feeling a little bit ungrounded and not safe. Are those sort of the symptoms for most people, or does anxiety showcase itself in a variety of ways depending on the person?
Yeah, it can showcase in different ways, and sometimes there's a sequence. So sometimes somebody will say, the first thing that happens is like my stomach tightens, and then I can just feel the rest of my body tighten, and then my heart starts beating really fast, and then it's just like I start to sweat, and then like my mind starts racing, and so there can be quite a few steps in that process. So what I normally do is I say, okay, I want you to think about a time when you are anxious. So for example, a client came to see me and she had extreme anxiety about going to the dentist. So we identified the different steps of her going to the dentist, which was phoning up to make the initial consult, driving in the car, getting to the waiting room, smelling that smell at the dentist that we all know what that smells like, going into the consult, laying in the chair. And what we actually went through, she was fine with everything up until she lay in the chair and they started lowering her back. So, you know how they lower you back in the chair to kind of get you in the right position for the dentist? That
Yeah.
was the only time that she experienced anxiety in that whole process. So, what I normally do is I go through and I say, where does your anxiety start? In what particular situation? Around what people? Is there a certain time of day? Is there a certain circumstance that it kind of sets you off? It could be in a group of people. What is something that happens quite often? Now, for this particular lady, we related it back to when she was younger and her first experience at the dentist. And they didn't tell her what was happening. And so they put her back in the chair and they anesthetized her at the same time without her knowledge or, consent. So she had that memory. So when we were able to clear all that, she was able to go to the dentist the next time and be able to go through the whole process. And there was no anxiety whatsoever. So sometimes when people say, I feel anxious about this situation, it's about really identifying what in particular about that person or situation are you anxious about.
Right. So it's not only identifying or being aware of your trigger, or I guess that's about your trigger, but then almost going in your imagination and working it out. Where is the exact point where I turn from being regular or feeling good to being anxious? Understand.
That's right. And for some people, they are so overwhelmed with a situation that they need help to identify that. And when you do, that whole scenario for her, there was only 10% of that whole scenario that her anxiety kicked in. The other 90% of it was actually okay. So sometimes it's a relief for people to go, oh, I'm not actually as anxious as I thought I was. And then you're able to give them different ways to cope in those situations.
Is anxiety and worrying a similar thing? Or do you often, if you catch yourself worrying, that can then result in is anxiety more of almost a physical reaction to a worrying thought? Or are the two connected?
They are both connected. I mean, anxiety is just projecting worrying thoughts out into the future, and it's always the worst case scenario. So if you told me that we were going to a party on Saturday, if I was in an anxious state, I'd be thinking about, oh, there'll probably be traffic on the road. Will we get there in a good enough time? What am I going to take for food if I've got to prepare food? Will there be somebody there that I can actually talk to or connect with? Maybe nobody will like me. So straight away, the mind goes to all these scenarios that are all very negative. And so it's like setting you up for failure. You can also have anxiety for something that is in the past, and that's why people get tripped up. People always think that anxiety is about the future. Sometimes if you have said or done something, you will reflect back and have anxiety about something that you've said in the past. Oh, why on earth did I say that to that person? Did I offend them? Did I say or do the wrong thing? And you have anxiety about something that you did. And quite often you'll talk to that person and you haven't offended them at all. It's all been in your imagination.
Yes. I'm very sure many people can relate to that. How would you recommend communicating anxiety to children? Because to me, it doesn't seem like an easy conversation.
Yeah, I would just keep it really simple. Children respond to physical sensations very well. So you just say, do you have a bit of tightness in your tummy? Do you feel a little bit busy in your head? And they seem to respond to that very well, as opposed to, trying to describe emotional states. So normally children will feel it in their body first, as well as adults. So I would start with that.
Okay. So what are some techniques that people can use when they're having an anxious episode? And do you think that, people can get to the point where they never feel anxiety, or is it just a fact of life?
Look, I think I've probably myself reduced my anxiety by about 85%. I know that some things I still get a little bit anxious about, but what I do is I'm able to recover within a matter of minutes. So I think it's unreasonable to think that you're never going to feel anxious in your life again. I think that's a bit of an unreasonable expectation. However, what you can do is know that you are safe and that you have ways to rebalance yourself within a matter of seconds or minutes. And that in itself is very reassuring, just to be able to get back into a place of balance again.
So does part of that come with being aware that, okay, I'm feeling anxiety at the time that it happens, as opposed to letting it grow? I mean, do you think that what you tend to focus on tends to grow bigger, as opposed to maybe relaxing and breathing it through, or reminding yourself that, the past is done. You said that stupid thing, or maybe it wasn't even that stupid, but it's already gone now, or the situation, the party's not here yet. So does some of that, come down to just taking a breath in the moment?
Yeah, well, I think as well, if there's certain situations that have caused you anxiety in the past, just be aware that they're likely to have some kind of effect on you and prepare yourself for them. So, what I would normally do is a breathing or calming technique. I would normally have a Bach flower remedy or a homeopathic remedy with me. I would normally set myself up to succeed. I would eat good foods that day. I'd go for a walk, whatever it took for me to feel in a balanced state, and always know you've got an exit strategy. So no matter what situation you are going into, you have an exit strategy if you need to get out if it's that bad. And then what you can actually do in the moment, if you feel that your body is starting to get a little bit anxious, you can then just say to yourself, okay, this is happening, that's okay. What is it that I'm actually anxious about? And quite often I've been in groups of people, and that has actually happened to me. And in my head, I'm just silently going, what is it that I'm actually afraid of? And sometimes it can be that you're in a group of, very well educated people, and you're just scared of saying something that sounds ridiculous or dumb. And then you can just go self talk, you know what? That's okay. Everybody has an opinion, and just like I'm listening to theirs, I'm sure they're willing to listen to mine. And so sometimes it's just about having that little conversation in your head, and also at the same time doing some deep breaths. You can visualize colors coming through your body. You can also be tensing your muscles on purpose and then just releasing without anybody actually knowing what you're doing on the spot. So you can be doing all of that while you're having a conversation with somebody. And sometimes it's just a matter of being honest. If you're confronted with somebody, you can just say, I just feel a little bit anxious around you for some reason. I'm not even sure why. And quite often people will go, oh, really? Oh, okay. And just bringing it out into the open quite often just alleviates it right then and there.
Yeah, I never considered before tensing my muscles to relax, but I do know that in Shavasana after yoga, sometimes you do that, you tighten and then you just relax, and it helps you to get really deeper into your Shavasana. So that's a really great tip as well. Thank you. I know that you
Yeah.
have a lot of experience as well with color therapy. Do you mind talking a little bit about when you were mentioning imagining colors, are there certain colors that you find work better than other colors to imagine to calm you down?
Yeah, normally pastel colors are very good and very relaxing because they have a very gentle hue to them. But it really depends. Each person, whenever I'm with a client, I'll ask them, what is a color for you that you find most relaxing? And for some people, it can be a bright yellow. It really doesn't matter. What matters is that that color is relaxing to you. So when we look at a sunrise and a sunset, I mean, they're very relaxing kind of images. The blues, the greens of a sea, of the ocean, aqua, all of those colors are very relaxing naturally to most people. But sometimes people will choose a red or a bright color, and that feels relaxing to them. Another way you can do is also visualize a rainbow. So you can have different colors flowing through you. It doesn't just have to be one. And another way that you can help with your anxiety is by wearing colors that uplift and relax you, or you can wear underwear or scarves or earrings or all those little things that you can look at and feel relaxed with that color. Just by wearing that color, you automatically feel relaxed by actually wearing it.
I love that. I think that it's not very common to talk about the power of colors, and yet colors really can change your mood. And yeah, I know I've had experiences before where the color red has just made me feel very aggressive or really just almost over the top. And I've been aware of that for a while, but I wasn't really ever thinking about having a sort of a color that I go to almost set the tone or set the mood. So I love that. Can you talk a bit more now? I just want to go back because you mentioned homeopathic, and did you say bath flower?
Bach, BACH, so Bach flower remedies. Yeah, there's one called Rescue Remedy, and it's in a little yellow container,
Yes.
and they have sprays, they have drops, they have pastels that you can actually, put in your mouth. And I use that all the time. So it's brilliant for adults, for children, for plants, for animals. There's been a lot of reports where there was a lady on our course, her dog had been hit by a car, and so she gave the dog Bach flower remedy straight into the mouth as she transported him to the vet. Now, what normally happens is the vet will not operate straight away because the dog is in shock and it needs time to be anesthetized and kind of calm down. And so she took the dog into the vet, and the vet asked her what time, the dog was actually hit. And she said, well, I heard that it was, at this particular time. And he just looked at her as though, well, that can't be right. And he said, oh, okay, thinking that, yeah, you've got the time wrong, lady. And he went on and he was able to commence the operation and save the dog's life. What he discovered after was that because she had given him the Bach flower remedy on the way to the hospital, the dog's whole nervous system had been able to calm down significantly so that the doctor was able to operate straight away. So the vet learned all of this after and then started stocking the Bach flower remedies in his practice because they worked so well, not just before the operation, but after. So the recovery of the animal was faster than he'd ever seen. And so he had to go, wow, I'm willing to experiment with this in my practice. And so it works well on children, pregnant women. You can give it to plants when you've forgotten to water them and you come back and they're all droopy. They respond very well. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I've heard a lot of people talk about rescue remedy, and I never really thought much about what goes into it.
Yeah, so there's 36 Bach flower remedies. I've got the whole kit, and I'm a practitioner of Bach flower remedies, but the rescue remedy is a brilliant combination of 5. And one of them is Star of Bethlehem, which deals with grief, shock, or fright. So those are the things that one particular essence is very good for that, and it's got 5 in there. So one of the ones that you can use is just by putting it in your water bottle every day. If you're going through a stressful time, I just do 5 sprays in my water bottle, and I just have it during the day as I drink my water bottle. You can also put it in drinks and things like that underneath your tongue, so you can actually ingest it during the day. But any time that I feel a little bit stressed, I just take some straight away in my mouth. It's very good at the scene of an accident, if you're visiting somebody in hospital, before a job interview, public speaking, going to the dentist, doctor, any time that you just feel a little bit nervous and on edge, it just takes the edge off.
Cool. Okay. Well, I'll put a link in the show notes as well to that. Did you want to talk any more about that kind of work? Because I do believe we have a mutual friend who has bought some stuff off you before that she's put in her water. And I think she said to me, she calls it happy water. So what's happy water?
So she wanted a blend that was uplifting, and so I just made a blend up for her. And she messaged me because her husband had drunk out of her bottle by mistake, so she needed some more. So now she labels it so he can't get his mitts on it. You can actually, depending on what emotional state you're in, there's a Bach flower remedy for each one of them. So there's one for jealousy, there's one for, if you've had some kind of shock, if you are totally exhausted in your mind and body. So there's specific remedies for each particular emotion. So depending on what you're moving through in your life, you can have that emotional support and be able to drink it. So it's a very easy way to get emotional support into your physical body, because we are in physical bodies, and sometimes we need that physical support. But I've had people that have never had it before and who are not into anything alternative, and they come back and they say, oh, I'm not really sure what was in that water, but I just feel better for it. Can I have a refill?
Yeah. It's kind of amazing when you think about it that, Mother Nature really has everything there that we need to set us along the right path, and to kind of calm ourselves down and to be better versions of ourselves. And I think that it's pretty easy to neglect some of those basic foundations, especially in today's world where we're kind of encouraged to, maybe look at more hardcore stuff, big pharma and whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and one of the things that I do, if something happens and I'm just like, wow, that's really going to be challenging for me, the first thing I do is get out the Bach flower list and I recognize what emotions I'm feeling, and then I'll just make up quite a strong combination. And within about 2 hours, I find that I'm back in balance. So that's my first thing that I always do is have one of those as soon as I feel any kind of stress or anxiety that I think, oh, I really need some help here.
That kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier, which is about, you were talking about having an exit strategy with anxiety, but, when you said that, it's almost also planning the strategies that you can use. So, when you said that you can use something like bark flower for public speaking, well, very often people know if they're going to have to speak publicly, they have that, knowledge in advance. So it's, kind of, it's preparing an exit strategy once you're in a situation to get out of it, but it's also creating a situation where you're feeling safe and you've got the tools in place to get the best possible outcome so you don't need your exit strategy.
Well, that's it. On my wedding day, I had 150 people all looking at me at once when I was walking up the aisle, and I had Bach Flower Remedy in the limo ride on the way there because that I'm not going to exit from my march up the aisle to meet my husband. But I felt, oh my goodness, everybody's looking at me. But because I'd taken a Bach Flower Remedy, I felt really calm and I was laughing and I was happy. My heart was racing, but I still was able to deal with it and in a place of happiness and joy instead of terror.
Yeah, I love that. So, do you find that anxiety can distract people from listening to themselves and hearing their inner voice, their intuition?
Absolutely. With anxiety, you're very much in your head. With your intuition, you're listening to your gut instinct. So normally, if you have high anxiety, you're very much in the head and you're not listening to your gut instinct, or you're not trusting it.
Hmm. So, Sharon, how would you define intuition?
Yeah, well, the word intuition, if you look at it, it's spelt in, tuition. So it's the tuition that is in you. So your intuition is always there to guide you, and it's always there for the best outcome for you and everybody involved. And I just believe it's your connection with that bigger source, whatever you may call that, whether it may be the universe or whatever that is. But I believe that you have the backing behind you, and it's about listening to your gut instinct to always do the best in every situation for yourself and all involved.
Yeah, because I did want to clarify with you whether or not your intuition was the same as your gut instinct, but you've just said it, that it is there.
Yeah, I believe it is. Look, people will often say, I had a gut instinct, I had a hunch. And I think people get to the point where they're analyzing everything. Your gut instinct to me is your intuition because it's normally the first thing that you sense.
So it's funny because when I think about intuition, I often think about my heart versus my head voice. And it's funny how the topic today is about anxiety and intuition, and how, we were saying that anxiety are almost too many thoughts and your intuition is, your gut feeling or your instinct. So it's almost as though it's that head versus heart kind of balance, or, sort of dance that's happening. And when you have too much head, it's very often too much anxiety, and then you're not hearing your heart voice.
And that's so true. And one of the things that I do every morning to integrate the head, heart, and gut, what I do is I do a tapping. So I tap on the top of my head to acknowledge my head. I tap on my heart, and then I tap on my gut. And what I do is I tap on all three a few times. And what that does is just link neurologically that all three have a say, and that all three are welcome, and that all three are in balance. But we work together as a team, and nobody dominates, but we're all there for the best outcome.
Right. Because I think it's probably pretty easy, at least in my experience, where sometimes if I'm overthinking something, to get frustrated with the fact that I'm overthinking it, when I know that that's what I'm doing. So I never thought of connecting the three together, because there's a reason why we have the three, right?
Well, that's it. You're only using 1/3 of your capabilities if you're only in your head. You want to be using 100% all the time. So to have all three activated is getting the best bang for your buck, I guess you could say.
So do you listen to, let's say you have a situation where it's difficult for you to tell whether or not your heart or your head are dominating, let's say, or your gut in this, okay? How do you know which voice to essentially pay attention to the most, or which one do you think has the most weight? Is the intuition never connected to your head?
The intuition normally comes first. What I've normally found with myself and with others is it's the first instinct, and then the head will try to reason or cancel it out, or can sometimes interfere. So the gut instinct is always there. The intuition is always there to protect you and to have the best outcome. So normally the gut instinct or the intuition would be first.
Okay. So are there ways to improve your awareness of your intuition and, start to, because some people listening might have no idea what we're talking about. They might live completely in their head, and it might not be something that they're familiar with, even how to get started listening to their inner self.
Yeah, so most people would be familiar with the expression that I just had a gut instinct. I had a feeling in my stomach. I just had a hunch. And so everybody would have experienced that at some time in their life, where they just had a feeling about something and then that thing transpired, whether it be somebody said something or an event happened or something happened that they just went, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. I just had a feeling about that. So that is your intuition. It really is as simple as that. It can be very subtle. It can be as simple as knowing that it'll be a good time to call somebody today. And then you call them and they go, oh, I was just thinking about you. That is just intuition. It truly can be that simple.
Do you think that you can use your intuition to make decisions as well?
Yeah, so what I do, I always make my decisions with my head, heart, and gut combined. Because if you only rely on one, I think you can also make decisions that are a little bit unbalanced. So what I normally do is I'll start to journal down. So every morning I just set aside, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes, you can put on music that you like. You can put on, sometimes people like looking at certain pictures or an image, but just get yourself into a quiet place and be able to just write down a few things and just say that you wanted the answer or some guidance on a certain particular subject. You can put down head, heart, and gut. And you can have 3 different columns, and you can just write down, well, my head's saying this, my heart's saying that, and my gut's saying that. And sometimes when you look at it, when you've written it down in black and white, you go, well, all 3 are actually wanting the same thing. They may be going about it a little different in a different way, but all 3 are actually wanting the same thing. And if you do the tapping beforehand to activate the head, heart, and gut before that process, then you'll be able to make sure that you can get the answer that you want by including all 3.
Right. So when you talk about tapping, I know that you have a background as well in EFT. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because are you touching, energy centers, or is it just the intention of connecting the 3 together that is what you're doing
Yeah.
physically?
So EFT is emotional freedom technique, and it's actually tapping on acupuncture points. And yes, there are meridians that run through the body that you can be specifically tapping on. But when I'm tapping on the head, heart, and gut, it's just to activate them. I'm just putting my intention, just making a connection with my head, making a connection with my heart, and then connecting with my gut. So as long as you are putting the intent into connecting with all 3, that's all that matters.
Right, because often we have these tools at hand and we don't know to use them.
Yeah, it's just keeping it really simple. And normally when you wake up in the morning, what most people find, and I find this sometimes too, the first 15 to 20 minutes in the morning, that's when sometimes the head is the busiest and your mind starts racing. And if you, that first 15 minutes, if you can just really slow down, put some relaxing music on, connect the head, heart, and gut, and then just be able to do some deep breathing as you're waking up and doing your morning routine, you'll be a lot calmer. That first 15 minutes, if you started off nice and slow, you will set the scene for the day. But if you start off and your head is racing, your mind is racing, and you're not connected, then you'll find that the rest of your day, it'll be more difficult to get back into balance. So the first 15 minutes of the day is really crucial.
Right. So it's about centering yourself and taking a moment to just almost calm down and align and then move on with whatever issues may come.
Yeah, and the morning time for a lot of people is when you have woken from your dream state and the worries from the day before kind of come back to haunt you, and you're like, oh, well, what about this and what about that, and fretting about things you've got to do that day. So it's really important just to be able to center yourself and come back to a place of balance. And it's almost as if you're, commanding the body and you're teaching the body that when we wake up, we start nice and slow. We're still going to get everything done in the day, but we don't need to race ahead and fret about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm one of those people that wakes up pretty much half brain dead. So I'm already very slow in the morning, but I think, time to center is very important, and definitely, meditation would be another way that you could probably, it's similar to what you're talking about, really just taking that intention.
Some people are able to put aside time straight in the morning and meditate with no interruption. And I know just as many people that say, well, I know that in the morning that's just not possible for me. So what you can do is what I do sometimes, just put on relaxing music. I've got a headphone on. I'm just going about my morning routine, but I'm just saying some nice affirmations. I'm just thinking about some happy memories. I'm just putting myself in a positive state. And so that first 15 minutes is just as gentle as I can be, even though you're going through your morning routine.
How do you think your life changes when, your head, your heart, and your gut are all working together and also balanced in a way you're talking about? Because when I picture the three things working together, they're working in harmony. So one's not overriding another one. Like we were saying earlier, they all have an equal place. So when you have that working and flowing, how have you seen it change your own life or the life of those around you?
Yeah, well, you would have heard of the expression, teamwork makes the dream work. And when you've got all three working, life feels like it's ease and flow. So you can get into relaxed states more easily. You can listen to your intuition. You can action that intuition with your ideas and concepts. And you do it in a more powerful way because your body feels energized and you feel uplifted and you feel motivated and inspired to be able to do those things. Whereas when you're just coming from the head energy, most people will say, I have all this stuff that I need to do, but I'm just so exhausted. And that's because the mind's racing ahead and everything else is kind of lagging behind. So you're only running, if you like, on one cylinder. If you work on all three at the same time, you're going to feel fully supported. Your energy is going to be better. You're not going to be worrying as much. You're going to be in a much happier and positive state, more joyful, and you're going to have a lot more intuition and a lot more good ideas that are easy to put into action and to see and experience good results.
Now, I know we've covered off quite a few things today, and you were initially talking at the beginning of our call about anxiety and, how you can help people work through some of these issues. So if somebody's having an issue that is something that is a bit bigger than them, would you recommend that, they give you a call and set up an appointment? Or what are some things, do you have any resources that you can recommend for people that might be dealing with anxiety or for people who want to work on their intuition?
Yeah, I'm just going to run through 7 steps that people will be able to follow. And then if they do these steps and they find that they still need some assistance, they will know. So I guess the first one is recognizing when your intuition's actually speaking to you. So if you have a hunch, if you just have a subtle, why did that just come into my mind? It's almost like you just have a hunch to do something, just an inclination. It's just about recognizing that that is intuition. It's very subtle. And then the second one is just deepening your intuition through some kind of meditation. That's slowing down, putting some music on, just being able to get yourself into a balanced state. The third one is listening to it. So listening to your intuition, and it can be at certain times of the day. So sometimes people like it first thing in the morning, some are at night, and for some people they like it in certain scenes. So by the beach, sunset, walking outdoors. And remember that you can often get, and I hear people say this all the time, some of your best ideas when you're in the shower, shampooing your hair, driving the car, and quite often in dreams. So just remember that those are all ways that you can be able to access your intuition. And then the fourth one is to ask a very direct question. So if you're wanting the answer to something, be very specific to your question, with your question in the first place. The fifth one is to write down anything that comes to you. So a journal that's dedicated to your intuitive thoughts. And what you can do is, again, put the columns with your head, heart, and gut. So you can write down just kind of what's coming from those 3 areas. The sixth step is to take some action. And the seventh one is to start small. So what I normally suggest is, if you have a hunch to go to the shops at a certain time, and then you get there and you go, wow, that was a really good time because there wasn't many people. And when I went into that shop, they had 50% off. That was a winner. Start with small things. Or, I'm going to turn left here because I think there might be some more the car spaces that are available, and then you go down, you turn left, and sure enough there's a car parking space right outside the shop that you want. Start really small and just start practicing little things like that until you get a little bit of confidence and trust, and then you can start working on the bigger things. I think one of the mistakes that people make is that they start with this big idea or question and they don't always follow through, or something goes wrong. But start really small and start practicing and get your confidence and trust up, and then you can start to move to bigger things.
I like how you said that, because it's so natural sometimes to take the same route home or to follow the same sort of pattern. Whereas, if you're listening to yourself and, maybe there's something inside you that says, why don't I go a different way home? Or why don't I go to a different store? It could be benefiting you for whatever reason. And you find that out after you've taken that step. How many times have you heard people go, oh, I really should have listened to myself or my intuition, but I didn't.
We've all done it, and we've all gone, oh, I knew that was going to happen. I just had a feeling. I'll give you an example. I was on a plane flight and I was going from one country to another. And the country that I was going to, I didn't have any job or accommodation set up. And I was on a flight, and it was a gentleman. There was 3 seats, and I was on one seat. The middle seat was vacant, and then he was sitting in the far seat. And I just kept getting the inclination to speak to this man. Never seen him before. And so I said to him, well, I don't know why. I just feel like it would be beneficial having a chat with you. So I moved over to the seat beside him. We got talking, had a lot in common. And then we got off the plane and went our separate ways. And it wasn't until I was leaving the airport that he was coming out around the same time. And he said, oh, where are you off to? And I said, oh, I'm not really sure yet. I don't have anything lined up with accommodation or a job or anything like that. And he said, well, I actually do upholstery cleaning. And one of my clients is looking for a house sitter. And it's for 3 months. I'm not sure if you'd be interested in that. And I said, yeah, I guess I could be. So long story short, he gave me the number, her phone number. I called her. This woman didn't know me from Adam. The guy had only had, a few hours on a flight with me. And I met with her in person. She interviewed me, and she had the most beautiful home in the most beautiful area. She had 2 dogs that she wanted cared for while she visited her children in another country. And so for 3 months, I looked after her beautiful animals and house sat for her and had the most wonderful accommodation and experience the first 3 months in this country. And that was all because of one conversation that started on a plane with a guy that I didn't know. And I could have easily gone, oh, well, he doesn't know me, or, put the TV on or whatever. But so what I say to people is just follow that one hunch, and then the next step will unfold, and the next step. You don't know where it's ever going to lead you, but the trust and faith starts to come. And after that, I kind of had a really good trust and faith in my intuition and that it was working. But if I hadn't struck up a conversation with that gentleman, it never would have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I had saved up all this money to go on a big trip to Australia. And I was sitting at home and I hadn't booked my ticket yet, but I was telling everybody, yeah, I'm going to Australia. I'm going to Australia. And I had all this money saved up, and I was, about a month and a half away from leaving. And I thought to myself, why am I not booking my trip? And I was super confused. And then I remember I just sat quietly, and I had this feeling that when I went to Australia, it would be for a very long time, and I wasn't ready to go yet. I wasn't ready to go and commit. So I thought to myself, okay, well, if I'm not going to go to Australia, then where are there really sexy accents? So I thought Scotland. So I booked my ticket the next day to Scotland. To make a long story short, about probably 6 months to a year into my trip, I met my Australian partner now in England. So my Australian partner was working in England, and we split up for 6.5 years. And then we got back together, and I moved to Australia, and I've been here for 7 years, and I'm becoming a citizen right now. So just that small me listening to my inner voice, which was, I'm not ready to go to Australia, changed the entire course of my whole life. And yeah.
Yeah, it's just amazing. And you just speak to everybody. Everybody has one of those stories. And I guess one of the other main things I wanted to point out was that your intuition is there for your, first and foremost, for your safety. So I remember watching a program on Oprah, and they had a specialist who was being interviewed by Oprah with regards to listening to your gut instinct with regards to your personal safety. And what they were saying is, sometimes they had somebody on the show who said that they came home and the wheelie bin was in a different position than it normally was. And they just went, that's just a bit unusual. So it wasn't anything major. It was just a little bit different. And what had happened was there was actually people inside the house doing a burglary at the time. But this person listened to their intuition and just went, that's a bit unusual. And so they just held back from going inside. They backed their car and just parked their car on the road. Now, if they had have gone into that particular house, their house at that time, the people actually had weapons, and you don't even know what would have happened. So sometimes it's a very subtle So anytime that you are questioning something, your intuition is always there first and foremost for your personal safety. So never discount it. If you're walking past an area that you just have a funny feeling about, and quite often that can be goosebumps, you have a funny feeling in your stomach, the hairs on the back of your neck raise, whatever that may be, it can be a physical sensation. Listen to it. It is there for a reason. If you are talking with somebody and you're getting those feelings, normally it's, there's something I need to pay attention to. There's a red flag here. So always listen to your instincts and your intuition, because it can be very subtle, but it may well save your life.
And you won't always necessarily know, because sometimes you could have this feeling don't go down that road, and then you don't, and you don't know whether or not that was the right decision. But, sometimes that's exactly the right decision
It
because
is. And
nothing
then
happened.
sometimes, yes, and then sometimes you'll get the confirmation because that particular train had a crash, or that plane didn't make it to its destination. And I've spoken with people who have said, I listened to my gut instinct and 300 people died that day. I have spoken with people who have actually listened to their intuition, and that has been the outcome of listening to it.
Wow.
So there's also those times when you don't get the confirmation, but I think you just got to go, for whatever reason, I know that I'm being looked after and I'm protected, and I'm going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. Because that would be an easy scenario to go, well, I've paid all this money for the flight. People are waiting for me. They're picking me up from the airport. There would be a variety of reasons in your head telling you to just, buck up and get on the flight. But if there's something
Yes.
loud and clear saying no, what's the worst that can happen? You're inconvenienced slightly, and it costs a bit of money, and you never know, why. But sometimes if it's as obvious as that, with people dying, then you made the right choice.
Yeah, when you speak to those people in person, it's just like, wow, this stuff really works.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, thank you, Sharon. We're pretty much at our hour already. Thank you so much. Those 7 tips are super helpful as well. And I will put links to Rescue Remedy. I know people can get a hold of you too if they feel that there's something inside them that they need maybe a little bit more of an adjustment. Sharon has, over 20 years experience in over 16 modalities. So if she can't help you, then you're probably just out of luck.
Everybody can be helped, but I think those resources are really good for your day-to-day management, and the Bach flower remedies are good to activate the intuition as well, to calm down the emotions and the busy head and just get you into a calmer place. So yeah, I always recommend them.
Yeah, fantastic. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I'll put the links to all your socials and your website and everything in the show notes. And if you do want to hear more from Sharon, we have had her on the show before. And I'll put the links in the show notes actually to previous episodes so you can hear more from Sharon, because it's been some really interesting conversations for sure that we've had. So thank you. And I hope to talk to you again.
Thanks, Lauren.
Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please do leave us a review where you listen to your podcast and share it with your friends. New episodes every Monday.